We are back with journalist Abigail Pogrebin and Rabbi Linzer on this anniversary of the Hamas attacks on Israel. They're out with a new book of vibrant conversations. It's called It Takes Two to Torah. Thank you both for coming in. I love the title. Explain what the book is.
Joe came up with the title. He gets credit for that. The book is a conversation. That's not a metaphor. It's actually a dialogue between the two of us. We come at this text very differently. We are two very different Jews who come from very different backgrounds and perspectives and life experiences. This book is obviously the foundational text, story, narrative of the Jewish people, but it's also the foundational document of Western civilization. We know that Martin Luther King invoked Deuteronomy in his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech, and Ben Franklin actually advocated for the national seal for America to be Moses parting the Red Sea. We see this story show up in a lot of places. The Jewish people read one section per week in synagogue every week. What we don't always do is talk about it out loud, and particularly with someone we disagree with on a lot of things. Dov is an Orthodox rabbi. He is the head of a very important rabbinical school, in Riverdale, New York, otherwise known as the Bronx. And I'm a journalist. You know, George, I started out at 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
I was a producer for Mike Wallace, and I took an unexpected turn to get very fixated on, very fascinated by the Jewish story, Jewish tradition and identity. I interviewed famous Jews about whether they cared about their Judaism, everyone from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to Natalie Portman and Steven Spielberg, and then about the Jewish holidays, because it bothered me that I didn't understand why there were so many and what their origins were and their meanings. And I turned to Dov because we met 14 years ago, often in my work, for guidance and help, and he turned to me and we began to have a chavruta, what we call a study partnership.
And this comes on a day, it's an important, we're on the anniversary of the Hamas attacks, as I said, and last year on that day, that was a special day in the Jewish faith. Explain the significance.
That was the holiday called Simchat Torah, which literally means the rejoicing of Torah. And, you know, Hamas probably chose that day very intentionally, a day when Jews would be celebrating, would not be prepared. It's 50 years after the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, which was actually, we're about to be celebrating that this Saturday. And that also was a day in which Jews were in the synagogue. So an attempt to, I think, turn one of our most joyous days into a day of tragedy. But the Jewish story is really one about resilience and perseverance, and a lot of that comes through our connection to our story and our connection to the Torah.
As Abby suggested, you guys are the odd couple of the Jewish faith. Explain the differences
Oscar
here.
Felix, the Torah study. Who's Oscar?
We're not going to go there again.
But how do the different perspectives inform what you're doing here?
Yeah, I think that my career has really been one of immersion in Torah text and in the Talmud and in traditional Jewish sources. And as Rabbi said, a traditional model there, the classic model is chavruta, study partner. And I think I've felt that all my life I've really allowed myself to be challenged, because I've always learned with a study partner and we would challenge each other over the meaning of the text. But when Abby and I met, I realized how narrow sort of my scope had been, how much I'd been living in my bubble, because that type of a conversation, like many of our conversations, are with people that we share 99% of a worldview with, and and our similar commitments, and the types of challenges are usually very limited. And with Abby, it really was all.
Abby, my name's Abby.
But there's a lesson there for all of us in this time.
There is a lesson. I think that we aren't listening to each other, and we're not. It sounds a little Pollyannish, but I don't think we're talking across difference. I feel like almost it's become almost like a platitude to say, let's bridge our differences. But I think what Dov and I modeled was something actually really hard and really challenging, but also that takes you to a new place, which is that these ideas should animate us in this day. This book actually makes you look at our lives, but it doesn't mean that we're going to end up as the same person at the end of it. It just means we're going to be open to a really different lens on the world.
It's inspiring for all of us. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
It Takes Two to Torah is out now.